At 92 and 87, Mr. and Mrs. Raghavan were mere shadows of their former selves. Once full of life, they now lived a quiet, restricted existence, confined to their home and entirely dependent on a round-the-clock nurse and a domestic helper. Their days revolved around wheelchairs, nebulizers, hearing aids, bland meals, and long stretches of silence. Above them on the upper floor lived their eldest daughter, one of three, herself battling the final stages of cancer. Though her heart ached for her aging parents, her deteriorating health left her helpless. Years of emotional and physical exhaustion had created a rift, disconnect between her and her parents' everyday struggles. An old wound lingered too. A dispute over an immovable property had strained their bond. Though time had softened the pain, forgiveness had never fully taken root. Her resentment remained buried but alive, and by extension, her family too kept their distance from the elderly couple. The nurse who tended to the old couple that April night was shockingly young, barely 18, untrained, and likely hired to cut costs by the agency Good Value for Money Nursing Home. A misnomer if there ever was one. She had fallen asleep during her shift, unaware that Mr. Raghavan had slipped out of bed, hit his head against the corner of a table, and collapsed. Blood trickled throughout the night, soaking into the sheets. No one noticed. His wife, lost in the haze of dementia and physical decay, lay still beside him, oblivious, confused, eyes closed for hours. It wasn't until 7:00 a.m. the next day that the nurse, startled and panicked, ran upstairs and informed the daughter. She came rushing down with what little energy she had left. What she saw shook her. Her father was unconscious, his head blood-soaked, his breath shallow. Her mother sat beside him, vacant, whispering incoherently. He was rushed to a reputed private hospital, sleek walls, polished corridors, and a corporate calm that masked its predatory core. In the emergency ward, tests were ordered without delay, and fees were demanded up front. The family, numbed and frightened, complied. A neurologist in a branded white coat with a practiced tone declared, "Chronic subdural hematoma, common in elderly falls. The blood between the brain and dura has built up. There's a midline brain shift. He needs emergency surgery, burr hole evacuation. We'll drill into the skull, remove the clot, relieve the pressure. Then ICU, then the ward. Later we'll do neck surgery too. For now, a neck brace." Before the family could even absorb the words, a counselor arrived, not with empathy, but with cost sheets. Surgery estimate, 3.8 lakhs. ICU plus ventilator, 1.25 lakh per day. High-risk surgery. Sign the high-risk consent form and pay Rs 4 lakh. The daughter hesitated. He's 93. He has a hip implant, fragile, barely sees or hears, dependent on a nebulizer. Will he survive the trauma of brain surgery? The counselor smiled, too quickly. He politely said, "There's always risk. But what's the alternative? Leave it untreated?" The family is an average middle-class Indian family. They always have fear of relatives' adverse comments. What the daughters didn't know was that the hospital had a quota to meet. ICU beds needed rotation. Procedures meant profits. Whether or not the patient could recover was secondary to the machinery of billing. The surgery was scheduled within the next 4 hours. High-risk consent was taken with a trembling signature. The family was emotionally trapped. To say no would be to let him die. To say yes was to risk everything: money, hope, and the tiny bit of dignity left to a dying man. In that cold, sterile hospital, empathy was optional, but billing was mandatory. The old man, Raghavan, had 3 daughters, no sons. One daughter was in the US on a temporary visit. The other 2, helpless in the face of medical jargon and societal guilt, agreed to the procedure. Conscience weighed heavy. What would people say if they didn't try everything? The surgery went ahead. Days passed into weeks. ICU, ventilator, daily reports with words the daughters couldn't grasp. The doctor kept pressing for alternatives and extended ICU stays, each one tagged with a number. The daughters began to resist. At times, the daughters visited intensive care unit. A dull tube light flickered above. The room smelled of dental and fading hope. The second daughter looked at her father's fingers, curled, thin, and shaking. Would he recover? It's better he leaves. The first daughter also thought, instead of struggling and troubling others, it's better this old man relieves me. Their father hadn't responded at all. Finally, after 7 days, he was moved to a general ward. He died the same evening. The hospital, after collecting 10 lakhs in bills, handed over the remains of the father with robotic efficiency and zero remorse. 3 people, including the attender and nurse, struggled to take the body to the van. As grief mounted, so did the tragedy. While the father lay in a coma, his wife, 87, frail, confused, and emotionally abandoned, suffered a cardiac arrest. Was it due to age-related? Did somebody inadvertently blurt it out that her husband is in hospital, battling for life? Or did she foresaw her husband waiting in the queue near the gates of hell or heaven? How would she live the rest of life without someone to quarrel? It was a shock to her. Maybe that killed her. Outside, a crow cawed from the AC duct. First daughter held her mother's bag tightly, the leather torn at the edges. She remembered how Amma never went anywhere without it, even to the temple. The second daughter thought, maybe she is demented now, but when young, how much special care she took for her and her granddaughter. The old lady died alone in the same house, with the third daughter still abroad. The other 2 cremated their mother quietly. Both parents were now gone. The rituals were done. The silence that followed was full of shadows. That's when the questions began. Continue.